Hi, I'm Westcott and this is my Banquist menu. Now, as you can see, this is a vegetarian menu. The reason for that is I believe we should champion the amazing vegetables and fruits that we have to offer in this country. So, first and foremost, we have a lovely starter of Isle of white tomatoes with some burrata, some English cherries, and this is all dressed in some wild chamomile and fennel pollen salt. Next, onto the main course, we have some braised white asparagus with some braised cabbage, some crispy Jersey raw potatoes, some truffle and a wild garlic velouté. And then to finish, we have a dark chocolate fondant with blood orange curd. Here at Banquist, we provide you with the best seasonal ingredients. So we have some beautiful Isle of white tomatoes. We've got some small ones as well. And then we have a burrata, some panko breadcrumbs. We have chamomile oil, which has been made from foraged wild chamomile. So the chamomile has been dried out and then infused into a lovely bit of rapeseed oil. I have tomato jam, then some lovely cherries, and then fennel pollen salt to finish. Then you have some hispi cabbage, some white asparagus, some vegetable stock, some Jersey raw potatoes and some garlic, some black truffle slices, some double cream and some white miso paste. And then you have some lovely wild garlic, really in season at the moment, some butter, a small potato, some more vegetable stock, banana shallot and some garlic, a little bit more double cream and some white wine. And to finish the meal, you have the lovely chocolate fondant mix. So this needs to be kept in the fridge right until the end of the menu, until I tell you to get it back out the fridge. Then you have some cocoa powder, you'll have some tin foil moulds, and then this beautiful blood orange curd. So originally I thought this dish needed a little bit of whipped chantilly cream, but this curd is so creamy and delicious and like silky, it doesn't need it at all. And that's everything. Let's get cooking. Banquist provides you with 90% of the stuff that you need, but you do need to bring a few things to the party. So you need to bring a blender. It doesn't have to be this specific blender. It could be a NutriBullet or just basically quite a decent blender that blends quite fine. You need a sieve. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, just a fine mesh sieve. And something for it to be, when you pour the sauce through, it goes into it. So you can use a pan or a bowl. A small pan of boiling water. You need a bowl of ice water. So I've just got some ice in there and just topped up with water and a bowl on top. You need a roasting tray. You need vegetable oil, rapeseed oil, sugar, fine salt, Maldon salt, some room temperature butter. This is helpful to have a pot of spoons if you've got a small spatula in there, and something like this. So this is a cake tester. You can use a paper clip that you can just unravel. Basically all that's to need to do is just to check that things are cooked, but either or is fine. Small saucepan, a small frying pan, and then a larger pan with a lid just to braise the cabbage. And then knives. A long serrated knife is helpful. You can use a small. If you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. It just makes it a little bit easier to cut the tomatoes. And then a long non-serrated knife just to carve. So first things first, you want to preheat your oven to 200 degrees Celsius. That's for the roast potatoes. And then just leave it slowly simmering. And I've got this pan on here on a medium to low heat. I have a pan of boiling water here. It's just about to come to the simmer. I'm just going to drop in washed Jersey raws inside, and I've already seasoned that with a nice pinch of fine salt. Now we're just going to bring it up to the simmer and simmer that for 10 to 15 minutes. Now to start, we're going to start with the wild garlic velouté. So we can make that and we can put it aside on ice, so it's made and it's like one headache kind of gone out of the way. So take banana shallot, or shallots if you have more than two. First of all, you want to cut it in half, and then you just want to take the skin off each half and just discard of the rubbish. Now, you just want to slice these super thin. Just be careful not to cut your hands off. So you want to like claw your hand, so you tuck your little fingertips underneath the rest of your finger, and you want to aim your knife away from you rather than towards you. That will just ensure that you get thin slices and that you don't cut the tips of your fingers off, which you don't want to do. And then same with the next half. You don't have to go as fast as this, obviously. Just do whatever you're safe and comfortable with. Now, once your shallot is done, you want to get your cloves of garlic, 2 cloves of garlic, just crush them with the back of a knife. You don't want to smash it too hard because it will all just smash up. You want to smash it just so the skin starts to break off. Once you do that, you then just peel the garlic cloves. And just slice them thinly. Again, be careful of your fingertips. And I leave the root and we throw that away. Now I'm going to start to cook the velouté. So, small bit of vegetable oil in the pan. A small knob of butter. And then the shallots and the garlic straight in. And then give it a nice season with just mould and salt. And then give that a good mix with a small spatula or a spoon. I'm just going to turn the heat up slightly. So this is number 6 out of 10. And I put the lid on the pan. Next, you want to take your potato, the one large potato you have, and you want to peel it. Just peel the potato. I go top to bottom lengthways. So it just means that you can tuck your fingers in behind the potato, and then once you've gone all the way around, you just nip the top and the bottom. Give your potato a little wash. See, I love cooking vegetables because in this country we have some of the best vegetables in the world, and I think a lot of people think that meat are always the star of the show, but if you treat vegetables in the right way, cook them with a bit of love, they can be just as much the star of the show as the meat can be. So this is what I love about this menu, is that it just highlights how great our produce is in this country. So once you've washed your potato, just slice it in half lengthways, put the two together, and just slice super thin as you can. Take your time. If you want to do one by one and you feel safer, then do that. The thinner the better on this one. And then in the second half, again, the same technique as before. You keep the knife slightly or slanted away from your fingers, and just a rocking motion, always keeping the knife on the finger so you don't lift the knife up to cut yourself. And every now and then, you want to take off the lid, and you just want to stir this, because this is very important that we don't colour these onions or these shallots, because what we want is a real vibrant green, lovely wild garlic sauce. And if you colour it, it might make it go a little bit brown or a little bit dull. So just try your best to nice and slow, stir occasionally with the lid on to make sure there's no colour on those shallots. Okay, once you've cut the potato, you want to put the potato into the pan with the shallot and the garlic. Give that a good stir. And you also just want to touch more mould and salt. And then your lid goes back on. And we're just going to we're going to sweat that for about a minute, and then we're going to add our white wine. So a little trick, before we add the white wine, because what we want to do is we want to cook these so they're nice, so the shallots are nice and cooked and the potatoes are just starting to get cooked. But what you might find is that the pan starts to colour a little bit before that happens. So, like this, you see, and if it does, just to get a little bit more moisture in there, just add a touch of water. And then give it a good stir. And then that will just create a bit more steam in there so it doesn't dry out as much. So while the shallot and the potato is cooking, you want to take your wild garlic, just spread it out a little bit, but keep it sort of bunched up as much as you can. And you want to just take 10 to 12 nice leaves like that. We're going to use that to garnish the plate later on. So just pick some nice leaves. What did I do when I won my first Michelin star? Well, I mean, it's the only Michelin star that I've won, and I think I got pretty drunk, if I'm being very honest, because we celebrated quite intensively because we worked so hard for it. So the whole team celebrated a lot, and yeah, we got pretty drunk. So now you've sweated this down a bit with the water. Now's the time to turn the heat up a bit. So now I'm going to turn it up to number 8 out of 10. So it's fairly high. So it's kind of like a medium high temperature now. Once you hear that kind of sizzle a little bit, you want to get your white wine. Just add that in. And now we just want to reduce this down, but we want to do it with the lid on. Sit the lid back on and then just leave that to simmer for 2 minutes. While that's simmering, what you want to do is prep your wild garlic ready to go into the velouté. So it's quite simple. You just run your knife roughly through it. Just like that. Make sure you have your cream ready. And at this point, it's quite important to have your blender ready, set up on, make sure it's working. Make sure you have your sieve and a container, a bowl or a pan underneath to catch the sauce, and a small ladle, or you can use this to push it through, something to push it through, and obviously your bowl of ice as well. So after the 2 minutes, take your lid off, and you can just see that bubbling away nicely. So what we're looking for is the wine to pretty much completely come all the way down. And then once that happens, we're going to add this warm vegetable stock. Again, just remember, no colour on these vegetables. So it's nearly there. So as you can see, it's pretty much completely evaporated. Now, you want to add in your vegetable stock. And then you want to bring that completely up to the boil with the lid on. Now you want to simmer this with the lid on. So the most important thing with this velouté is to make sure that the potato is cooked. That's why I said to slice it really thin. Now the reason for that, if the potato is really nice and cooked, it will blend into a super smooth velouté. If it's not, it will be a little bit grainy, a little bit kind of chunky, and it won't go into a lovely smooth sauce. So just be patient, take your time. We're going to check it now. If it's not ready, we're just going to cook it for a bit longer. And if it is ready, then we'll go on to the next stage. So lid off, and just give it a little stir. Take out a piece of potato. Just put it on the chopping board, and it should really easily, it should really easily just fall apart in your fingers when you put some pressure on it, but it didn't. So it just needs a touch longer. So I'm going to give that another 2 minutes and then check it again. And then after that, we'll go on to the next stage. The way you know the potatoes are ready is you just grab one out, and when you squeeze it, it will give. I mean, if you kept on squeezing it, would break apart. That means they're ready. So you can just drain them into a colander. We'll just let them sit there to drain in there. So this has taken a bit longer than I thought. I guess each potato is quite different, so they take, different times to cook. So this has taken me around 10 minutes, 12 minutes in total. Basically, don't go on to the next step that I'm about to show you until the potato falls apart in your hand when you touch it. So we're ready now. So I'm just going to turn this down to a medium heat. Now you want to add your double cream. Give that a good stir. You just want to bring that back up to the simmer. Now you want to get your wild garlic, just sprinkle that inside. Get all that in there. Don't forget you've kept 10 to 12 leaves aside to garnish the plate later. Now, give that a good stir. Once you've had all the garlic, you want to simmer this for a few minutes. Don't let it boil its tits off because it will, apologise my French, but it will just really overcook the garlic and just might split the sauce out. So just let it simmer, no higher than this, just for around 2 minutes. So after the 2 minutes, you want to just carefully place everything into the blender. Doesn't matter if you miss a little bit, you can just clean that up later. And then place that on. Make sure your lid is on properly. And turn your blender on. You want to make sure the blender is on full power. So I blended that on full power for about 1.5 minutes. Now carefully take your lid off. Stick that in your wash. Now we want to pass this through the fine sieve into a container in the bottom. Now, so with this sieve you can just tap it through. But if you don't have one of these sieves, you just have like a different sieve without the handle, you can just use a small spatula just to push it through. It works absolutely fine. And then put that into the wash. Now you want to get this either into your bowl of ice, or if you want, you can just put that into ice. Works just as well. And then you just want to stand here and whisk it for 30 seconds until it just starts to cool down. The reason for doing this is to keep it nice and vibrant green, and you just get that fresher wild garlic taste. If you leave it just to kind of sit there and stew and don't put it over ice, it will just become a little bit dull and lose that fragrance that it has. If you don't have ice, it's not the end of the world. It just, like I said, keeps it more green and more fragrant. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of water out because I've got too much in there. That's it. Now I'm going to leave that on the side. I'm just going to give that a little whisk every few minutes just until it cools down. Okay, so now for the starter. So first things first, pan of boiling water on. So I've just put cold water into a pan, a little bit of fine salt. You want to bring that up to the boil. I've also, as you've noticed, I've got the wild garlic velouté here that we made with the ice water, because what we're going to do, when this water comes up, we're going to quickly blanch these and put them and shock them into the ice water to stop the cooking process. So just have that on hand. And also it's quite good because you can then just keep regularly stirring it to make sure it's cold. So it's right there to remember. Also here, I have a pan on low heat. What I do now, make sure it's on a low heat, so that's number 4 out of 10. And here I have a tray with this is 3 sheets of just normal kitchen paper. And then you'll realise why that is in a bit. Right, so first of all, we're going to do the panko breadcrumb. So your panko breadcrumbs here, pan's on a medium heat, and then you want to put, for about that much panko, you want that much butter. So put that into the pan, and we just want to slowly bring this up until it becomes nice, nutty and brown and foamy. When it does, we're going to put this breadcrumb in, stir it, season it slightly, and then we're just going to cook it super slowly, like number 3 on this stove. So nice and slowly until it will go nice, crispy and brown. While we're doing that, we'll also prep these tomatoes. While the butter's melting and you're waiting for your pan to boil, let's prep the tomatoes. So these are the small baby tomatoes, not the big ones. So you just want to take them, and you see where the top is, where the stalk come out of. Get a small straight knife and just very gently just go into just one line and then another line like a crisscross. But you're just literally going into the skin. You want to do that on all the tomatoes. Reason for that, when we blanch them, then the skin, when you made the crisscross, the skin will come off. And then as soon as that happens, we'll take them out and shock them in the ice water, and that will stop the cooking process. And then once they've chilled for about a minute, we'll take them out and we'll peel them down. dry them on a little bit of cloth, and then we're going to marinate them in our tomato jam. I guess the chef that I look up to the most is, and it always has been, is Tom Aikens. He was my mentor. I worked for him for 4 years. I was his head chef. You know, he, in my eyes, really taught me how to cook. So you want to wait until your butter gets to a nice nutty, foamy brown colour before you add in the panko breadcrumbs. So I've just taken the wild garlic velouté off of the ice, just so the ice is ready for the tomatoes to go in. So just keep stirring it just before it becomes brown, just to aerate it a little bit. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. As you can see, it's starting to be sort of aerated. So the water's come to the boil. I'm just going to turn it down a touch, just so I can focus on these breadcrumbs first. So we're nearly there. So as you can see, it's nice and frothy. Starts to go a little bit nutty brown. Panko breadcrumbs go in. Give that a nice stir. And then it will look something like this. So the breadcrumbs will absorb all of the butter. Now you want to turn this down to, I'm going to turn this down to like number 5. That's 5 out of 10. Give it nice seasoning of fine salt. Don't go too heavy. Now the trick with this is you don't leave it. Don't leave the pan, because if you do, you'll burn it. So what you want to do is you want to stay here, and it takes a little while, but you just want to, around about 5 minutes, but you just want to keep continuously stirring it until it gets to a nice golden brown colour. Right. So this is starting to go brown. It's not quite there yet, so back on. And again, if you don't keep stirring this, you won't get a golden, even colour. And you don't want to do it too fast, because you'll get a colour, but it won't be crispy. So slow and steady wins the race. Keep stirring as you do it until they're golden brown, and then I'll show you what to do. So as you can see, they're getting, it's going crispier and crispier, darker and darker. Be careful not to take it too dark, because if you do, it'll get a nice, it'll get, not a nice, it'll be horrible bitter taste. Okay, so that's nice and golden brown. Now just tip that onto your paper. Spread it out, and just spread this out on the paper. And what that's doing is just absorbing all that butter away. So what then you're left with is just the crispy panko that has that butter flavour. But it's not as greasy as it would be if you didn't do this. So just spend 30 seconds doing this, and then you can just leave it on the paper and put that aside. Right, so we'll just put that to one side. Now we're going to blanch the tomatoes. So you want your tomato water boiling, not simmering, boiling. Once it boils, make sure you got yourself a nice slotted spoon or something to take these out. Or even better, you could use a sieve. So have your sieve ready, then your tomatoes go in. And just watch them. They'll take literally seconds, not minutes. So that's them done. Take them over to the sink. Just drain them out the water, put them straight into the ice. Put them over to your board. Now just leave them in there for 30 seconds, and then we're going to peel them. So once they've chilled down, just take them out, and with your hands you should just be able to remove the skin. If you can't with your hands, you can just gently peel it off with a knife, but they look just like that, so the skin just comes straight off. Really simple. Give them a little wash after, just to make sure any little pieces of the skin come off as well. So you can see we've got orange and yellow and red, all different colours. They all have a slight different flavour. Some a little sweeter than the others, but they just have a real vibrancy to the plate as well. Just keep going until you're finished. And yes, the water is cold and it does really freeze your hands, but you just have to persevere it and continue. Okay, I believe that's it. You can just get rid of that. And now with these tomatoes, what's nice, if you have one of these, it's just a J-cloth. If not, you can just use some more kitchen paper. You just want to take these, stick them onto the paper, and just give them a little roll. It just gets off any excess of little like stodgy bits of tomato that they can, what lies underneath the skin sometimes. Just make them super sharp. Just gently roll, don't put any pressure on them. And then you want a nice dry bowl. Then carefully put the tomatoes in the bowl. Then take your tomato jam. I have a lot here, I don't think you'll have as much. You just want to drizzle that in. What this is, so what I've done here is, when this tomato dish was on the menu, all the trimmings that you get, which you'll find, you get the 2 end trimmings, we keep it, and then we roast it every few days in the oven, and we press that all that roasted tomato through a muslin cloth or a cheesecloth. And what you're left with is lovely juice. And then what we do is we reduce that juice down to a glaze / jam like this. And all the natural sugars in the tomatoes, they come together and thicken it up and produce this colour. And it just holds so much umami and flavour, it's delicious. So, just toss that in it. Get your fennel pollen salt, which again, the fennel pollen salt that you'll get, I foraged this fennel pollen last summer, dried it all out, and then that's just mixed with some molten salt and left just to marinate in the salt for a few months. So you just season it with that, and what it does is just really fragrant. So the fennel pollen is really fragrant, really fresh, slightly sort of lemony. It just works lovely with this dish. So just mix that really well. I'll put a touch more. And then you just leave them to marinate until we're going to plate up later. So next we're on to the tomatoes. So here you have some lovely Isle of Wight tomatoes. So you have lots of different colours and shapes. And they all sort of just add, again, another bit of contrast and visual aspect to the dish. So we're going to slice them all slightly differently. So this is where your long straight knife comes into play. First of all, this green one, let's start with that. So just trim the end. Remember that end's going to be for the reduced tomato jam for someone else to make. So nice thick sort of centimetre slices. Don't go too thin with these. If you do, it doesn't really have any texture. This whole dish is about beautiful, lovely English ingredients. This is quite a simplistic dish, so it's all about flavour, all about seasonality. So this dish is all about just celebrating these tomatoes. So I'm going to cut them in half. Then if you just carefully arrange these on the tray. So you may find that you get a different colours or different sizes. That's part of the charm of this dish, that you're going to get different sizes and different colours, but they're Isle of Wight tomatoes. They're all produced in the same way, and they're all delicious. So the small one, again, just what I do for these small ones, just cut the top and the bottom off, and then just cut it directly straight in half. So that's a bit chunkier. Same with the other one. And then if you have these ones, just again cut the end off, and then just cut them into slices. Remember, thicker is better than thinner. Now these ones, I like to cut these ones into wedges because they have these natural kind of what look like bums. So I just cut into these grooves, and then that into half, and then sort of into half again. And then if you have a little bit of root, you can just trim that off. So into half, cut that a little bit off. Just going to do the other half of this as well. So you have that, and then this one, I'm just going to do a few bigger wedges. I'm only going to use half of this. So in half. So you can make this part up yourself really, but what you're looking for is not to cut them too thin, to leave them nice and chunky so they have a bit of bite to them and a bit of texture. But you can really just change the shape as much as you want, change the size as much as you want, but really it's just about how you want it to look visually. So once you've done that, we're going to move on to the cherries. Quite simply, just take the stalk off each cherry. I would say, depending on the size you're going to get, you're looking around about 3 to 4 a portion, whole cherries each. So let's do 3 here. You take a small knife, starting from the top where you took the stalk off, you cut down to the stone, just move them out of the way, and then you leave the knife where it is, you just roll the cherry until it joins up all the way around. Then you take each side, you twist it, and then one side will have no stone, one side will have the stone. Keep them apart. And keep doing that with all the cherries. So all the ones with no stone on one side, and then all the ones with the stone on the other side. So these ones are ready to go, so just put them on your tray. Then with these ones, with a small knife, just hold it like that. So you just got the tip, just put the tip pointing into the cherry stone. Don't move the knife, just move the knife around the cherry by spinning the cherry around, and just as clean as you can, you take the stone out. It's the easiest way, I find, to take these stones out of cherries without de-pitting them. So discard the seeds and keep the trim for a salad or something in the week. Now, for me, the star of the show is, well, one of the stars of the show for this dish is the chamomile oil. So this is wild chamomile, which has been picked, dried, and then infused in rapeseed oil and cooked very slowly overnight at 45 degrees, just to infuse the rapeseed oil. And then we just leave it to steep in there for weeks. And then when we need it, we just pass it off, and we're left with this. You're left with it, it's just really aromatic, really like quite sort of herbalicious without having proper herbs in it. And then basically what you're going to do is you're just going to douse your tomatoes quite heavily in this oil. Don't be shy. Keep it off the cherries. And then just get a spoon and just make sure that's covered all of those tops of those tomatoes. And these quarters, I would just roll in them. And then next, you want to get your fennel pollen salt. And you can be quite generous with the salt because the tomatoes can take them. If you don't season them enough, it's a bit bland, this dish. Obviously don't over season, but probably go a little bit heavier than you first think. Crunch up the molten salt as you do it, releasing all those flavours from the fennel pollen. Wash your hands. And now we're going to move on to the burrata. So just put them to one side. So the burrata, just make sure that your board is not covered in cherry juice. Now, carefully using a spoon, take out your burrata onto a chopping board. Try not to pop the burrata. And just have enough space on your tray where you're going to put your burrata. Now, I'm going to cut this and try and flip it so the side that I've cut is facing up. because it will kind of all goo out a little bit. So you want to be quite quick with this. So cut it and then kind of stick it up. And just put that onto the tray with the cut side facing up. Give that burrata a nice season with just Maldon salt and some cracked black pepper. And now it's time to plate. Just add a nice amount of vegetable oil and then put it back into the oven. And then we want to add some garlic to the tray. And that's just going to flavour that oil. So just crush these 2 cloves of garlic and just roughly chop them up. Discard the skin and the root. Just give them a little crush. And you want to just put that into the oil. So now you've got your tomatoes sliced, marinated in chamomile oil and seasoned with fennel pond salt. You've cut your cherries. You've cut your burrata, cut side up, Maldon salt and pepper. You obviously have your tomatoes that have been marinating. And I've just put the panko breadcrumbs off the kitchen paper into a small container. And then I've taken the fennel fronds out of the fridge. So the idea of this now is, again, you can pick and choose how you kind of arrange this, but I'm gonna just take 1 slice of the green and just kind of do this quite organically. Don't overthink it. So you kind of want to use, obviously, half for each plate. You can, these little ones, you can even, you can mix them up and put them the other way up. And then you want to take these little tomatoes and just put them in some nice places. So if you notice, I've left a little space in the middle. That is going to be for the burrata, just to sit nicely in there. If you make a little spillage, that's absolutely fine. Just grab a little kitchen roll and just clean it up as you go, so you end up with a nice clean plate. And then you want to get a few cherries and just kind of position them in and around. So it was six halves on each one. Then you want to take your panko breadcrumbs and you just want to sprinkle that over some of the burrata. Just about that much. Take some of the fennel fronds and just pick nice little pieces. Then we're just going to garnish this just to make it look nice and pretty. With the fennel fronds. Try and get a little bit of height on it if you can. Just helps visually. That's basically that. This is my Isle of Wight tomato dish with burrata, chamomile and fennel pollen. So the next course is braised cabbage with some poached white asparagus, some roasted Jersey Rolls potatoes and a wild garlic velouté with a little bit of truffle at the end. And then we take our potatoes. Now here I just have like a utensil that most people have in the kitchen. What's good to use as well is a masher. Actually something just with these lines and that's flat like that. So you just want to gently push these potatoes so they kind of crush like this. So they go a little bit flat. And what we're doing is we're just increasing the surface area for these potatoes to get sort of roasted and crispy on. If they start to fall apart a little bit, it doesn't really matter, but don't push so hard that they actually fall apart. You want them to stay together, you just want to crush them slightly. And also when you crush them, you get these sort of broken bits here. And then what happens with these, they get really crispy and delicious. These are basically little cheap roast potatoes. A lot quicker than peeling potatoes, parboiling them and roasting them. And these are lovely in season Jersey Rolls, so the perfect potato for this. So you can get rid of that. You want to take your tray out of the oven. So that garlic has now done its job. It's infused that oil. So you just want to just take that out. You can leave it in if you want. And then you want to put these potatoes, you hear that sizzle, you want to hear that sizzle, into this oil. Be careful not to burn your hands. Nice bit of Maldon salt. And some cracked black pepper. And then back into the oven at 200 degrees for around 10 minutes. So first things first, we already have our wild garlic velouté ready. We're just going to heat that later. We're going to move on to preparing our poaching stock for the white asparagus. So I just have a saucepan here. Just going to pour that in. This is the vegetable stock. And you just want to bring that up to a rapid boil. And I'll show you what to do with that. In the meantime, we're going to cook our cabbage. So, yeah, I have the pan on here that's already on a medium heat. I'm just going to turn it up slightly so it's on a high heat. So it's number 7 out of 10 on this induction. So, this is your hispi cabbage. You have the root here and you have the pointy tip here. Just want to cut the slight part of the root off, but leave most of the root in. So it's just that little bit there. And then take that bit off if it's flapping about. And then quite confidently stick your knife halfway through the root at the base and straight through the cabbage in half. And that's how what we're going to braise, these two halves. Discard that. When this is on a high heat, you want to add a little bit of vegetable stock. Sorry, this is vegetable oil, not stock. Vegetable stock on the brain. When that's really nice and hot, you want to add in your cabbage. So what you want to hear that sizzle. Then season that with fine salt. And then you can add a small knob of butter to the pan. I'm going to add another small knob. So this pan has come up to the board, the vegetable stock. I'm just going to take that off for now. Just want to focus on this cabbage. Okay, so you just, when the heat comes back up to the pan in the cabbage, just add another butter in. And what you're looking for is that flat side to get really nice and golden brown. So if I'll show you this side, so you can see that. We're just really colouring this, but we want it all coloured, so this isn't ready yet, so we're going to put that back in. And you just want to occasionally move these around, just so we know they're getting evenly coloured. So you know it's like just keep adding the small pieces of butter into here. It's just to regulate the temperature. So when the butter starts to get a touch too brown, add a touch more butter in, and that just like keeps the butter nice and foamy and brown instead of burning. So keep checking your cabbage. So now I'll show you what it looks like. So we're getting there. The more colour on this, the more flavour. So this one is very much nearly there. Okay, so once you've achieved a nice golden brown colour on the cabbage, so just like that, you take 150 ml of vegetable stock, and you pour that straight in, and the lid goes on, and you turn this temperature down to a nice gentle simmer. So on this hob is 3 to 4 out of 10. Now it's time to finish the poaching liquor for the asparagus. So you take this vegetable stock that you brought up to a simmer before and bring it back up to a simmer. And then you want to take some butter and the miso paste. So now you just add the miso paste. And you grab yourself a whisk and you whisk the miso paste into the vegetable stock. Now, when this has come up back to the simmer, you just want to add in a nice spoonful of butter. Then get your whisk, take it off the heat, and just whisk in your butter. I'm just going to add the rest of this, so it's 2 big spoonfuls at least. Then off the heat, just whisk that butter in so it's nicely incorporated and emulsified. And there you have the braising liquor for the white asparagus. So we have the cabbage gently braising for around 2 minutes. So as you can see, it's not boiling its head off, it's just a gentle simmer. And what that's doing is just gently braising this cabbage. Now, you want to grab yourself one of these. It's just like I said, it's a cake tester, or you can use a paper clip and just unravel it and use that. And basically what we're looking for is the thickest part of the cabbage. You put it in and it goes through with a touch of resistance, but not too much. If it's too much, it means it's not cooked enough. If it goes through too easily, it means it's overcooked. Anyway, these need a good 3 to 4 minutes. The emulsion for the asparagus is made and ready. Cabbage, just a touch longer. So the potatoes have been in the oven for 10 minutes. I'm just going to take them out. And we're just going to turn these over. And as you can see, you've got more flat surface area to get nice and golden brown. So you get a nice crispier, more tasty potato. And then we're going to put these back into the oven for another 15 minutes. And now the cabbage is also ready. Now the way I know that is that, as I said, the skewer goes through the thickest part of the cabbage with ease. And then you just drain that out into this lovely, into just dish like this. Just turn them upside down. And just pour this juice over the top. Just like that. Now, get rid of this pan. put the cabbage to one side. It's time to do the asparagus. So here you have some white asparagus. Now the reason why they're white is that they're grown in the dark, so they see no sunlight. And that's the reason why they're white. Anyway, so be very careful of them, they can break quite easily. Just line them up, so I've got all the tips here and all the bases here. You just want to cut around 1.5 inches off the base. So they're all the same size. And you discard the base. Now, with these now this peeler I've had for years, it's quite a blunt peeler. If you can get your hands on quite a blunt peeler, it's better than a sharp one. The sharper it is, the more you take off and the more unrounded it will become, and you'll lose more of the asparagus. So just start from the top here. So I'm just going to leave this bit here and peel from here to here. And as I do it on the board, I'm going to spin it and carefully just take one piece off at a time, but top to bottom, while spinning the asparagus. And then just continue and do all of the spears the same way. Just make sure you take your time doing this, and you want to get off every piece because the skin isn't very nice to eat. It's quite firm in your mouth and quite chewy. It's not like green asparagus. It's a little bit more unedible in a way. So I just turn it as I'm peeling it. So I'm just going to go with 3 spears each here. It's more than enough with the braised cabbage and the velouté. That's it. So discard the peel. Not much use for that, to be honest. Now you want to take the miso poaching liquor that you made, put it into a pan like this with sides. So kind of shallow. You want it to be about an inch sort of deep, the liquid, once you put it into a pan, and just put that onto a gentle poach. So you want that onto about number 4 on this this range. Just basically a low to medium heat. Once that comes up, we're going to drop the white asparagus in and gently poach it until it's just cooked. And we're going to just portion the braised cabbage that we prepared earlier. So you carefully take each half out of the container onto the chopping board. So I have the root end this end and then the tip of the cabbage this end. Now all you want to do, you can see the root here. You just want to push the bottom of it up and just with your knife, just cut at an angle right down to the bottom. You want to do the same with the next one. So you just want to cut down, so you're cutting through the thick parts of the root because they're just a little, they're lovely, but it just makes it harder to roll, which I'm going to show you to do now. So next, you want to take out just the middle heart bit like that. Just makes this easier to roll. This is totally delicious, I wouldn't throw it away. You can keep this on the side of the plate as well. Then you want to turn these over and just remove the first layer. And then turn them back over again. Now, carefully, you just want to nice and tightly roll it. So just flip that over, tightly roll it over, and when it gets to this stage, just cut that slight end bit off, and just leave that there like that. And then the same process for the next one. Cut that end bit off. And then bring the two together and cut, just trim the ends off. A nice sawing motion. Carefully turn them around. The same again. As I said, all this trim is absolutely delicious. I wouldn't throw it away. this is just to plate a real nice visual dish. Put them back into the stock and they're ready to go in the oven now. So just to recap a little bit, we have our miso poaching stock for the white asparagus just up to a really light simmer. It's not even simmer, it's just warm. Now I've just put the velouté that we made earlier, the wild garlic velouté, into a saucepan, and I'm just going to very gently warm that through. I mean, like very, very gently. Then we have our cabbage that's been cooked and portioned and back into its own juice. And then we have the wild garlic leaves that we put aside earlier. We have the sliced truffle that come in your box. And then we have the white asparagus. And we have the Jersey raw potatoes roasted in the oven. They have about 6 minutes left. So now we're going to poach the white asparagus. So as you can see, there's some steam coming off this pan, but it's not boiling and it's not, you know, it's not doing nothing and it's not boiling. It's in the middle. So now you just want to gently put your asparagus in. Now I'm just going to turn this up a little bit, bring it to a slight simmer. And we're just going to gently poach these while they're roasting in the oven, while this is warming through. By the time these are poached, they should be ready. And then we can warm the cabbage up, warm the velouté up, add a little bit of rapeseed oil to the velouté, and then it's basically time to plate. So these are lovely and golden brown, as you can see. And do you remember when I said that we just squashed them to make them a little bit flatter so there's more surface area to the colour? You can just see all of that, look, lovely and golden brown and there. So now I'm just going to, remember that garlic that we infused with the oil? That's going to flavour these potatoes beautifully. So just take a moment here just to gently roll those in that oil. Now, place them back into the oven just for another 5 minutes and then they're finished. In the meantime, you just want to have a look at your asparagus. So these have been poaching for around 5 minutes. So it's a real light simmer. Now, what you're trying to do is you just want to have a little feel at the base of these asparagus. They can be a little bit tricky to get hold of. Now, the base is the thickest part, so this is the thickest part we're checking. So when this goes through with a little bit of resistance, it's ready. So you want them with a little bit of bite to them, but you don't want them to be too raw because they'll just be a little bit too al dente, too raw to eat, basically. So in the meantime, we're just gently heating this up until these are ready. Now we're getting close to the time to plate this dish. These have been poaching for around 10 minutes. The potatoes have had their last 5 minutes. So I'm just going to pull these off the heat and just let them sit in there and they'll suck up all that lovely poaching liquor. I'm just going to turn this up a touch so we get to finish that velouté. And I'm going to put this cabbage into the oven. And at the same time, I'll take the potatoes out because they're nice and crispy. You don't want them to go too dark because they'll start to get a little bit bitter. Now I just want to take these off and drain them onto some kitchen paper or a J cloth. And just get rid of this tray. Now with the velouté, just going to bring this up a little bit faster, and as it's warming up you can just take a little bit of rapeseed oil and just, we call it monte, just mix it in slowly and whisk while you're doing it. So I just have a small whisk here, just about that much. And that there, you can see the steam coming off it. You don't want to boil this because you don't want it to lose its freshness or fragrance, so you just want to bring it to a simmer and then remove that. And then we're going to place this, when it's ready, into a jug. So make sure you have a jug ready. Just pour that into the jug. Now you'll find that you have a fair bit left of this soup over. There's a reason for that. When you blend it and when you make it, if you make it in smaller batches, it doesn't blend as well. So this can be eaten the next day with some, just as a soup with some crusty bread, or as a sauce with some lamb or beef or whatever you want. It's just really versatile. So don't throw it away. Make sure you keep it in the fridge and reheat it and use that again. So you have your potatoes and your sauce. Your cabbage is in the oven. And now your poached asparagus is ready to come out. So now it's time to start to plate. So you want to carefully take the asparagus that's been just resting in this poaching liquor out. Just drain as much off before you put it on as you can. Put that to one side. Now you want to take your cabbage out of the oven. Just going to move some of these potatoes. So that's that. Move that to one side. Now, if you just put these garlic leaves in the oven for about 10 to 20 seconds, they'll just slightly wilt. And what happens is then they become pliable so you can move them and edible, because raw garlic is not that pleasant. So now to plate. First of all, we're going to take 3 asparagus spears. So 2 first. Nice piece of braised cabbage. And some of these lovely crispy potatoes. And then you want to take your wild garlic out of the oven. Just like that. And then the wild garlic, as you can see, is now just slightly wilted and can be moved around the plate. I think just 3 or 4 of those is lovely. And then you have your black truffle. These have just been nice and thinly sliced. So you just want to arrange these as and when you see fit. And then, last but not least, just finish with a wild garlic sauce and just pour it just over the white asparagus in the middle of the plate. And there you have it, braised cabbage with some poached white asparagus, crispy Jersey Royals, truffle and wild garlic velouté. So I'm not exactly a master of wine or in any form an expert. I mean, I like to drink the stuff, but I can't say that I'm an expert in knowing all the characteristics of wine or the knowledge of it. But what I do know is that I really do try to pair wine with food that is as elegant as the dishes are and that are as crisp and fresh and as fragrant and not too heavy. And I know that I've tasted this, and this wine this goes really well with the tomatoes because it's really fresh, really crisp, and yeah, it just works really well. So for the last dish, we're going to do a dark chocolate fondant with blood orange. So first and foremost, I've turned the oven down to 185 degrees. Now, the fondant mixture has been in the fridge the whole time throughout this menu. It's very important because it needs to be nice and firm. Now, first things first, you'll get moulds that look like these but aren't exactly like these. They'll be tin foil moulds, but you do exactly the same process with them. First, you have to get some room temperature butter and some cocoa butter. So first we're going to line these moulds so that when we do pipe the mixture into here, once they're cooked and they turn out, it makes them easier to come out. If you don't do this process, they won't come out of the molds. So I advise you to do this. So soft butter, you want to just put it into the mold and just kind of rub it all on the sides and then on the bottom. Now, any excess, put it back into a container. And that's it. And continue with the other ones. So make sure you get all of the excess off of the molds. And wash your hands. Now, the next stage of this is to line it with cocoa powder. So, the best way that I find to do this is grab yourself a plate, because it can get quite messy. Now, just tip your mould like that, get your cocoa powder, put a fair bit in, like that much. Now, just roll it around, right to the top, then the bottom, keep rolling, and then tap it out. If you see there's a little bit missing with cocoa powder, just fill it again, and then tap again. And repeat that process with all 3 moulds. One last one. That's them done. And wash your hands. Okay, so now your moulds are lined. Just place them on a tray that can go into the oven. And then get your mix, and just for about 20 seconds, just gently massage it in your hands a little bit. That's just to loosen it up a touch, because it can be a little bit too firm in the fridge. But it's better to be like that than too runny. If your mix is too runny and you try and pipe it, you won't get a gooey centre in the middle. So, you want to cut your piping bag about that thick. And then when you pipe these, you want to pipe just in one motion from the top up. Don't try and spiral around or anything like that. So just go in, and we're going to go to about up to here. So you want to leave about 1 centimetre at the top. So you might notice that there's 3 moulds. That's because we always do an extra one for the cameraman. Just squeeze hard from the top of the bag. So you have 1 centimetre left at the bottom. Now I just gently tap the bottom. That just evens the mix out. Just poke in any tips that you have from the piping bag. So these are going to go into the oven at 185, that's 185 degrees for 17 minutes, that's 17. And while they're in the oven, do not open the oven. That's very important. So the chocolate fondants have been in the oven for 17 minutes. I'm literally just about to take them out, but just want to remind you that I've just taken this curd out, and you just want to give it a little shake. So to the oven. First things first, you just want to double check these, that the middle is not super jelly. I'll bring it closer for you to see. Be careful when you put it down, don't smash it down because it might drop. Basically, you just want to make sure that these middles are not super gooey and wet, because if they are, you want to give it a minute or 2 more. Now, you want to leave these to rest for 1 or 2 minutes before we even attempt to take them out of the molds. If you try to take it out now, they'll probably collapse and fall apart as you take them out. So just be patient, wait 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll turn them out. Okay, so the fondant has rested for about 1.5 minutes. Now, first thing you want to do, it's still quite hot, so be careful, but you want to get a nice cloth in your hand so you're not going to burn your hand. And just quickly put that in there. Now, with a small knife, just very carefully, just run your knife sort of around the edge and just loosen it. Don't go crazy, and if it seems loose anyway, don't worry about it too much. This one seems like it is quite loose, so it's fine. So, I'm right-handed, so I want to put the cloth in my right hand. If you're left-handed, do it the other way around. And you want to get your plate, tilt it like that, fondant on top. And this is where I get nervous. No, I'm joking, I never do. So that there is a chocolate fondant. Now, in here, this is the orange curd. As I said, you've already shaken it about. It's a super simple but delicious dessert. I suggest once you put this on that you eat it within the first 2 minutes and you cut it open and you see all that lovely gooey middle. If you leave it too long, it will firm up and bake. So you won't get that gooey centre. It'll be delicious, but you won't get that gooey centre. So with the blood orange curd, you just want to be quite liberal with it and just like that and watch it come down. And that's that. So here you have it. Your last course is a dark chocolate fondant with blood orange curd. My favourite crisp is salt and vinegar. Definitely would be a Sunday roast. I'd go lamb.
No trimmings?
I mean, all the trimmings. You're going to have all the trimmings in there. Obviously, like Sunday roast is a Sunday roast, you know what I mean? But the meat is going to be lamb.
Nice.
Favourite restaurant would be Brat. My favourite restaurant changes quite often. At the moment, it's Brat. My worst in the kitchen was when I was racing Tom Aikens at deboning pig's trotters, and I stuck a paring knife into my hand here, and I thought I'd cut my veins, and I didn't. I just had to go to the hospital to get a tetanus jab. But that terrified the shit out of me. Dead or alive? Free dinner guests, dead or alive? Jim Morrison, Thomas Keller, and Alex Turner.